The smell of antiseptic hung in the air like a heavy ghost as Zara sat beside her father's hospital bed, her hand clutching his frail, liver-spotted fingers. Outside, Lagos was alive with horns and hurried footsteps, but in this room, time was standing still. Chief Damien Ugukwa, once the lion of the African automobile empire, now lay shrunken beneath white sheets, his breath rattling like old paper in a breeze. His eyes, still sharp despite the sickness eating away at him, looked straight into his daughter's soul. "Zara," he rasped, and her name cracked through his lips like a final verdict. "I need you to promise me something." She swallowed hard. "Anything, Papa. Don't let this company fall into the wrong hands when I'm gone. And marry a man not for what he has, but for who he is. Someone with a good heart. Someone who will protect this legacy with you, not use it to destroy you." The monitors beeped softly beside them, a cruel reminder that every second was borrowed. Zara nodded slowly, the weight of the world landing on her shoulders. She had grown up surrounded by wealth and ambition. Men in suits bowed when she entered a room. They sent flowers, poetry, Rolexes engraved with words they didn't mean. They all knew who she was, the heiress to a billion-dollar empire, a diamond ring in human form. But none of them saw her. Not really. Not when she wasn't wearing designer dresses or stepping out of tinted SUVs. They didn't know how she cried watching her father cough into his silk handkerchief at night, or how lonely it felt walking through marbled hallways echoing with silence. That night, as her father slept, Zara sat by the hospital window, watching the city lights blink like tiny pulses of hope. She thought about love, about legacy, about lies dressed in Gucci belts and cologne. And she made her decision. The next morning, she called her most trusted staff to the mansion. A tailor came in and delivered plain overalls, a janitor's ID card, rubber gloves, a hairnet. She stood in front of the mirror and cut her hair into thick braids. No makeup, no gold. When she looked at herself again, she didn't see an heiress. She saw Zanab Musa, the name she had chosen from her mother's old village registry. Her reflection startled her. For once, she didn't recognize the girl staring back, and maybe that was the point. Her father sat in his wheelchair, wheeled in by the nurse, his eyes narrowing when he saw her. "You're serious about this?" he asked. "Deadly," she said. He sighed, long and tired. "They'll mock you. They'll disrespect you." "Let them," she replied. "I want to see their truth. And if no one passes your test, then I'll run this company alone." He nodded slowly. "Then go, but be careful. The wolves are always watching." She walked out of the mansion like a shadow and entered her company the next morning through the back gate reserved for cleaners. No one noticed her. No one looked twice. Her name no longer carried weight. Her face no longer turned heads. She walked through the lobby where her portrait once hung on a marble wall, now pretending to mop the floor beneath it. People stepped over her mop. One even spilled coffee and didn't apologize. And just like that, she became invisible. But being invisible had its gifts. She listened. She watched. And what she heard made her skin crawl. Department heads laughing about fake invoices, a secretary mocking her father's illness, a senior executive discussing kickbacks during lunch breaks. They were greedy, arrogant, careless, and they thought they were untouchable. Zara kept a small notebook tucked inside her utility pouch, scribbling down names, dates, conversations. Every night she returned home exhausted, her hands blistered from chemicals, her heart bruised from betrayal, but she never once complained. She had asked for the truth. Now she had it. And in the middle of all the corruption, one man stood out. Dennis. He was everything the others weren't. Kind, respectful, efficient. He helped her carry buckets without being asked. He never looked at her with condescension. He called her Madame Zanab, even though she wore rubber gloves. He offered her food one day when he noticed she skipped lunch. She refused politely, but something about him lingered with her through the evening. Could he be the one? She wasn't sure. But she wanted to find out. She started observing him. He worked hard, stayed late, never spoke ill of anyone. He smiled rarely, but when he did, it was genuine. Zara felt her heart opening again, cautiously, like a door creaking in an old house. Until one night. She had stayed behind to clean the executive boardroom and heard voices through the thin walls. It was Dennis on the phone. His voice, usually calm, now carried a sharp edge. Once the old man dies, we make our move. The daughter? She's clueless. All we need is her signature. Zara froze. Her breath hitched. Her chest tightened. The mop slipped from her hand. She had almost believed him, almost let herself fall. She backed away from the door, tears hot on her cheeks. She felt stupid, exposed, angry. She ran out of the building before the tears fell harder. That night, she sat in her old bedroom, staring at the ceiling. She thought of her father's words. Don't let this company fall. She clenched her fists. If the wolves were ready to feast, she would become the fire. She would find someone worthy, even if it meant digging through dirt to find gold. Zara didn't cry the next morning. The girl who had once wept silently in the corner of a hospital room had hardened. The betrayal from Dennis no longer pierced her like glass, it fueled her like fire. The world she thought she knew was filled with masks. Men who polished their lies and smiled for the cameras, and now that she had seen the devil up close and kind, she knew better than to fall for appearances again. She returned to the office at 5 a.m., uniform pressed, scarf neatly tied, her mop in hand like a sword. She cleaned in silence, but her ears never slept. That day she began to take risks. She deliberately slowed down her pace near private meetings. She lingered around the elevators and stairwells where the real conversations happened. She noticed patterns. Who entered whose office and at what time. Who received deliveries that never went through official records. She watched Dennis from afar, no longer with admiration but with the precise coldness of a hunter. His charm still fooled everyone else. He laughed, held doors open, handed out compliments like sweets. But now she could hear the poison under his breath, the calculation behind his glances. He was playing chess with the company's soul, and she had almost been his queen. Not anymore. It was in that space of disillusionment that she noticed someone else. Quiet. Almost forgettable at first glance. A cleaner like her. His name tag said Chike. She had passed him before, exchanged simple greetings, but never really looked at him. But now she did. He was methodical, early, respectful. While others joked crudely or complained, he moved with purpose. He didn't speak unless spoken to, but when he did, his words had weight. He wiped windows like they mattered. He picked up papers others stepped over. One afternoon, she saw him help a new cleaner navigate the maze of corridors without being asked. He didn't seek attention. He just did what needed to be done. Zara began to watch him, not in the way she had observed Dennis, but with a quiet curiosity. She noticed how people underestimated him. They talked freely around him, thinking he was just another uniform. But he heard. He noticed, and she realized he was doing what she was doing, listening, remembering, caring in secret. One day, as they worked near the executive floor, Chaiki whispered to her, "Be careful around Mr. Amos. He jokes about taking over the company once the old man's gone. I've heard it more than once." Zara froze. "You reported it?" she asked, keeping her tone light. He nodded. "Anonymous tip. HR has a box. I use it sometimes. They don't know it's me." Zara looked at him, surprised. No recognition, no reward. He did it because it was right. That night she found herself smiling for the first time in weeks. In the days that followed, they started talking more. Over lunch breaks, under stairwells, while mopping, side by side. Chick never pried, never flirted. He simply existed beside her like a calm breeze in a storm. And slowly, Zara let her guard down. She never told him who she was, but she told him things that mattered. That her father was sick. That power could be poison. That people often wore masks to survive. He listened without judgment, nodding occasionally. "That's true," he said once, "but sometimes it's the ones without power who see the most." Zara felt something stir inside her. A softness she hadn't felt since before Dennis. Then came the turning point. One rainy Tuesday evening, the office was nearly empty due to a flood warning. Zara had stayed late, pretending to clean a storage closet. Chick, ever diligent, was fixing a leaking pipe in the second-floor pantry. A loud crash echoed down the hallway. They both froze. Stepping quietly into the corridor, they saw two procurement staff members sneaking out of the server room with what looked like hard drives and sealed folders. Chick's eyes narrowed. "They're erasing something," he muttered. Zara's heart pounded. This wasn't just office gossip anymore. It was theft, sabotage, evidence destruction. The next day, panic spread through the building. The server had crashed. Records were missing. Dennis, always the knight in shining armor, led the response with dramatic speeches and false promises. He blamed technical faults, accused the IT team, presented himself as the savior. But Zara knew the truth. And now she had someone she could trust to dig deeper. Chick. She told him carefully, without revealing her true identity, that she had access to people loyal to the chairman. That they needed real proof. "Are you willing to help?" she asked. Chaiki didn't blink. "Yes," he said simply, "for justice." Together, they planted a recording device in an abandoned meeting room known to host secret conversations. Chaiki lured the conspirators in with a rumor about a recovered flash drive. 2 days later, they watched the footage Dennis, Amos, and Kelvin discussing bribes, plans to manipulate the board, even timelines of when the chairman would likely die. Zara sat beside Chicky, silent as the room filled with their enemies' voices. And then Dennis said it. "Once the old man is gone, she'll sign anything. She's soft, clueless, and the board already halfway bought." Zara clenched her fists, but she didn't cry. She looked at Cheeky instead. He didn't speak. He just stared at the screen, his jaw tight, his eyes blazing. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about justice, integrity, everything her father believed in. The day of the confrontation, Chief Damien returned to the company in a wheelchair, escorted by loyal staff. Zara stood in the boardroom dressed as Zanab. Dennis smirked as he spoke, until the footage played. Silence, then gasps, then rage. Security flooded the room. Arrests were made. Dennis shouted, "She did this! That cleaner, Zainab. The room turned to Zara. Chief Damien smiled. Shall we tell them? Zara stepped forward. She removed her scarf, her uniform, revealing the woman they all thought had disappeared. My name is Zara Ugukwa, she said, daughter of the CEO. And, yes, the cleaner you mocked? The room erupted in disbelief. Some board members couldn't meet her eyes. Dennis looked like a man drowning. But it wasn't his face that hurt her the most. It was Chikey's. Standing near the back door, his eyes wide, not with admiration, but betrayal. He walked out without a word, and Zara followed. Zara ran after him, out of the boardroom, past the shocked stares and murmurs, into the service corridor where the walls smelled like paint thinner and old secrets. "Chike," she called, her voice echoing down the hall, but he didn't stop. His footsteps were steady, fast, his back rigid with hurt. She caught up to him by the loading dock, her breath heavy, her scarf half falling from her hair. "Please," she said, grabbing his sleeve, "just let me explain." He turned slowly, and the look in his eyes was not anger. It was something worse, betrayal. "So I was just another test?" he asked quietly. "Another piece in your puzzle to see who's good enough for the throne?" She shook her head. "No, it wasn't like that. At first, maybe, but not with you. Not after I saw who you really are." His jaw clenched. "You lied to me every day." "I had to," she whispered. "If I told anyone who I was, they would have treated me differently. I wouldn't have seen the truth. I wouldn't have seen you." He looked away toward the street beyond the gate. "Do you know what it feels like to finally trust someone only to find out they were never who they said they were?" Her heart cracked open. "Yes," she said, "because I trusted someone once too, and he almost destroyed everything." He turned back to her then, eyes softer but still guarded. "And you think that excuse is a lie?" She hesitated. "No, but I'm not asking you to forget. I'm just asking you not to walk away before you see the whole story." Chick didn't respond. He simply stepped away, walking into the wet evening light, leaving her standing in the half-dark of the hallway with the taste of regret thick on her tongue. That night, Zara sat beside her father in the garden of their estate, her uniform gone, her soul exposed. Chief Damien looked at her with quiet pride, but his face was pale, his breath shallow. "You did it," he said. "You unmasked them." She nodded. "But I lost someone in the process, someone good." Her father reached over and squeezed her hand with what little strength he had left. "If he's as good as you say, he'll come back. If not, he wasn't meant to stay." She blinked back tears. "But I don't want a life where power means loneliness. I don't want a kingdom built on mistrust." "Then rule it with truth," he said, "even if it costs you everything." Days passed. The news spread. Zara's bravery became the stuff of business legend. She was offered interviews, magazine covers, accolades, but she declined them all. Instead, she focused on restoring the company from within, promoting honest employees, reviewing policies, building a culture where no one felt invisible. But her heart remained hollow, a room filled with echoes. She missed Chick, not just his presence, but the silence between them, the comfort in their shared purpose. She had searched for a good man, and she had found one. But in protecting herself, she had pushed him away. One afternoon, she walked into the staff room, now transformed into a welcoming lounge with bright chairs and a bookshelf, and found something taped to the inside of a locker, a note. It wasn't addressed to anyone, but she knew the handwriting. Chike. Sometimes the people who wear masks are not trying to deceive you. They're just trying to survive. I judged too fast, and maybe I was wrong too." She stood there, reading it again and again, hope blooming like a stubborn flower in dry soil. A week later, she stood on the rooftop garden her father had built years ago, a place he once called the lungs of the company. The city stretched out before her, golden in the sunset. She heard the elevator behind her ping open. She didn't turn. "You came," she said quietly. Chick stepped beside her, hands in his pockets, unsure. "I didn't know if I should." "I wasn't sure if you would." They stood in silence for a long moment. The wind tangled her braids, lifted his shirt collar. "I didn't tell you because I didn't think I could trust anyone," she said. "But I do trust you. I just didn't know how to show it." He looked at her, then truly looked. "And I didn't think someone like you could see someone like me. I thought maybe I was just convenient." She turned toward him fully. "You were never convenient. You were everything I wasn't expecting, but everything I needed." He didn't speak, but the tightness in his jaw relaxed. "And I don't want a world without you in it," she said, voice barely a whisper. He reached out then, slow and certain, and took her hand. And for the first time since her father's hospital room, she felt safe. Not because of wealth, not because of power, but because of the quiet strength of the man beside her. That night, Chief Damien closed his eyes for the last time, with a soft smile on his face and Zara's hand in his. His legacy lived on not through assets or titles, but through a daughter who chose truth, and the man who stood beside her not for what she had, but for who she was. Zara stood at the edge of her father's grave, surrounded by the quiet murmurs of mourners and the rustling of wind through acacia trees. The sun filtered through the clouds in soft shafts of light, as if the sky itself was offering a silent benediction. She held Chike's hand tightly, her grip trembling, her heart swollen with sorrow and silent gratitude. Chief Damien had left this world as he lived in it dignified, resolved, and surrounded by the people who mattered. And yet, as the final handful of earth was dropped upon his resting place, the weight of everything he had built now sat squarely upon her shoulders. It wasn't just a company he had passed down. It was a kingdom of ideas, of trust, of values that had survived storms, but not without scars. And now it was hers. The following days were a blur of transition meetings, condolence letters, and legal formalities. Zara, though outwardly composed, felt like she was walking a tightrope stretched between grief and duty. But Cheeky was always near, never overstepping, never overshadowing her, simply anchoring her with his presence. They had not spoken again of love or future or what their bond now meant in the absence of lies, but their silences were different. They were no longer heavy with unspoken pain, but full of shared understanding, of a quiet rebuilding that didn't need to be rushed. Still, the world around them was anything but patient. Some board members, though purged of the most corrupt elements, still harbored doubts. A few questioned Chike's presence, unable to reconcile the idea of a former cleaner standing beside the new CEO in strategic discussions. "We need experience," one whispered during a break, "not sentiment." Zara heard everything, but she said nothing, not yet. She wanted actions to speak louder than her voice, a voice that had once been ignored even by those who now clapped the loudest. Chicky, for his part, never sought validation. He worked quietly behind the scenes, assisting with logistics, auditing blind spots in operations, even helping the janitorial team restructure their routes for efficiency. One afternoon, Zara watched him from her office as he helped two delivery men fix a broken lift mechanism. He wiped the grease off his hands with an old cloth and smiled at them like they were equals, because to him, they were. That moment, she knew. This man wasn't just part of her life. He was part of her vision. The shift began gradually. Zara appointed Chicky as Director of Internal Culture and Ethics, a position that didn't exist until she created it. It raised eyebrows, triggered murmurs, but within weeks the impact was visible. Complaints from junior staff dropped. Anonymous HR reports began to highlight a change in tone, in attitude, in how people were treated. Workers who had once felt invisible now felt seen. He implemented suggestion boxes, not just for protocol, but for ideas. He started a weekly Voice of the Staff meeting where everyone from cleaners to coders could speak directly to executive leads. One driver pitched a new delivery system and saved the company millions in transport costs. A junior clerk's idea became the blueprint for streamlining invoice processing. Chike didn't just listen. He empowered. But outside the company walls, trouble was brewing. A rival conglomerate had caught scent of the transition period and began making aggressive acquisition moves targeting vendors, spreading false rumors about the company's internal chaos, and even attempting to buy out one of its satellite tech partners. Zara called an emergency meeting, her voice firm as steel. They think because my father is gone, we're vulnerable. They think because I was once hidden behind a mop, I don't know how to fight. They're wrong. That night, in the quiet of their shared apartment, she sat with Cheeky by the window, both watching the city lights flicker like fireflies. I feel like I'm running on borrowed courage, she admitted. Cheeky turned to her gently. Then borrow mine, he said, placing his hand over hers. Because I've seen you fight, and I've never seen you lose, not even when everything tried to break you. She smiled through tired eyes. You believe in me more than I do. That's what love does, he whispered. It fills in the cracks you can't see. Together, they launched the comeback. Zara appeared on a televised business forum, not as the grieving heiress, but as a strategist. She unveiled a partnership with two rising African fintech companies, securing a network of collaborations that lock their competitors out of key markets. Cheeky led an internal values campaign highlighting staff stories, reminding people of the company's humble roots, its journey from a one-room office in Enugu to a multinational brand. By month's end, the media narrative shifted. No longer was the company seen as vulnerable. It was respected, admired, feared again, but for the right reasons. And still, amidst all the transformation, their personal story quietly bloomed. There were no lavish dates, no dramatic confessions, just long walks, quiet laughter, and late nights spent drafting new company principles on the backs of napkins. One Sunday morning, Zara woke to find a handwritten note by the bedside. It read, I don't need the world to call me director. You already call me partner. And that's the only title that matters. She placed the note in the drawer where she kept her father's final letter. Two men, so different, yet both tied to her heart by threads of sacrifice and strength. The final challenge came unexpectedly. A group of former executives filed a lawsuit claiming Zara's undercover infiltration had violated labor laws and company policy. The case caught media attention. Critics called it reckless. But Zara didn't flinch. She called a press conference not in a suit, but in her old cleaner uniform. She stood at the podium, mop in hand, cameras flashing, and said, "This is who I was, and I won't apologize for it, because the truth I found in this uniform saved my father's company. And if honesty is a crime, then I'll gladly be guilty." The world responded, not with scorn, but with thunderous support. Social media lit up with hashtags, @CleanTruth, @the heiress who swept. Workers across the country, janitors, secretaries, delivery men posted their own stories of being overlooked and dismissed. Zara had become something more than a CEO. She was a symbol of humility, of courage, of change. And through it all, Chaiki was there. Never at the front, never needing applause, just beside her where he'd always been. The rooftop garden had changed. Once overgrown and forgotten, it now bloomed with live golden marigolds, lilac creepers, and a delicate carpet of white daisies brushing against the wooden railings. The sun was setting over Lagos, painting the sky in soft orange and pink, casting long shadows that danced across the petals like blessings from a world beyond. Zara stood at the center of it all, not in a designer dress flown in from Paris, but in a simple ivory gown tailored by a local seamstress. Her hair was coiled naturally, adorned with beads passed down from her mother's wedding chest, and around her neck hung the pendant her father gave her at 16, a sun etched into gold, the family crest. Chaiki stood across from her, dressed in a clean charcoal suit, his shirt crisp, his tie slightly off-center the way he always wore it. He looked at her not with awe, but with deep, unwavering calm, the kind that steadied storms. Around them stood the people who had walked every mile of their journey. Mama Ruth, the janitor, who once helped Zara learn to scrub floors with vinegar and salt. Adamu, the driver, whose daughter had become the first girl in her family to attend university thanks to the scholarship fund the couple had launched. Young interns and seasoned board members all gathered not because of status, but because of something greater respect. When the vows were spoken, there were no dramatic declarations. Zara simply said, "You saw me when I was invisible, and you believed in me when I forgot how. I promised to walk beside you, not in front of you, for every storm, every sunrise, every quiet in between." And Chicky, with a voice steady as stone, replied, "I loved you before I knew your name, and I'll keep loving you even after the world forgets ours." The applause was soft but warm. A string quartet played an old Yoruba melody, and the evening faded into laughter, gentle toasts, and a feast prepared by the company's kitchen staff as a gift. Zara and Chicky didn't dance under chandeliers or marble arches. They danced barefoot beneath fairy lights strung between solar panels and trees planted in recycled steel drums. They didn't cut a towering cake. They shared warm jollof and chin-chin from the same plate, smiling like two kids who had finally found their way home. In the months that followed, the company launched the Zara Initiative, a mentorship and startup fund that supported underprivileged youth with business ideas. They opened a secondary headquarters in northern Nigeria, built with sustainable materials and staffed with locals trained through free vocational programs. Chaiki became more than a director. He became a speaker, an advocate, a quiet hero who reminded corporations that character mattered more than CVs. Zara's name was etched in business magazines and school walls, but she always returned to that garden rooftop where the flowers bloomed even when no one watched. Sometimes she came alone, sometimes with Chicky, and sometimes just to feel the wind on her face and whisper to the sky, "I hope you see this, Papa." One rainy afternoon, as they sat side by side reading reports under the sound of distant thunder, Chike handed her a small box. Inside it lay a key, a tiny one, shaped like a heart. She looked at him, confused. "It's not to a car," he smiled. "It's the first key to our new house, the one we'll build, from scratch. Our story, our roof, our rules." She leaned into his shoulder, eyes glassy but smiling. "I already feel home." Years passed. The company grew. So did their family. 2 children, 1 boy with Zara's fire, and 1 girl with Chike's patience. They didn't attend private schools overseas. They were taught locally, walked to school by their parents, and learned that kindness wasn't weakness. It was strength. They knew the story of the mop. They knew the rooftop. And they knew that power didn't come from above, but from within. And one morning, as the sun rose again over Lagos and light spilled into the rooftop garden where it had all begun, Zara stood watching her children run between the marigolds. Cheeky stepped behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and kissed her temple. She closed her eyes. The world had once doubted her, betrayed her, tested her. But she had found what she searched for, not in boardrooms or bank accounts or wedding altars. She found it in truth, in resilience, in a man with calloused hands and an unshakable heart. And as the wind whispered through the flowers and the city roared below, Zara smiled and thought, "Some crowns are made of gold. Mine was forged from dust, silence, and love, and I would wear it again."